Sir Kevin Barron, former chair of the Parliamentary Privileges Committee, which is now, of course, the Standards Committee. He's also a former Labour MP. Sir Kevin, good to see you.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. So we're told to expect changes to the disciplinary process for MPs before Christmas. What should inform the review?
Well, I think what should inform the review is what is going to the people are going to have more trust in. And as far as I'm concerned, the antics of last week, and particularly trying to set up another committee without any lay members on it, was just a ridiculous situation. And I'm pleased that the government have backed down from that. It seems from what the current chair said in the debate yesterday that they have got some changes that they'd like to take place. I have to say, I had changes I'd like to take place on occasions, and they weren't accepted because, people in there didn't like to. But the one change that we did was to introduce lay members, and I think that's been to the general good. And one of them was on the national media this week and saying how she sees it sat in with MPs, looking at what MPs are doing, and it gives me confidence that that particular changes that we made was worth doing.
What changes did you want to make that you said weren't accepted?
Well, I remember one. This was under Speaker Bercow when the Parliamentary Commission had recommended that what we should do, we should put a rule in that says if a member of Parliament in their personal or private life brought Parliament into disrepute, then that should be something that could be investigated. That was fought against by the three major political parties in Parliament at the time. They put an amendment down that Speaker Bercow accepted. And the amendment simply said that if anybody is found under that rule, the new rule that was going to be accepted, the Parliamentary Commissioner could not do the investigation. And this was like saying, well, it's back to MPs doing the investigation then. I thought that was outrageous. I did meet Speaker Bercow, who didn't change anything. And what we then, it took us 18 months to go back to the rules that we'd had before that amendment had been put in by the three whips officers and been accepted. So, there's many things that you'd like to do, some things you shouldn't, but it's pretty clear to me that leaving it to recommendations by the current system is the best way to do it.
The Conservative MP and Father of the House, Sir Peter Bottomley, said yesterday, I believe the current system does work, can work and should work. Is he right? He's the most experienced serving Member of Parliament.
I think by and large he is right. I don't think there's any question about that. They may want to make some changes around making things better. The bigger argument's been an issue about the appeal. Now, everybody under the current system can appeal the findings. What they can't do at the moment is appeal the decision that the committee take, like the 30 days working day suspension that was on offer last week. But I have to say that they can look at that, but the major issue is about whether or not anybody has broken the rules. And quite ironically, I stood down, you may remember this, I stood down in the autumn of 2018. In July of 2018, we recommended a suspension of a member from Northern Ireland for he's been found guilty. We recommended a suspension of 30 days, as it was with Owen Pattison. That suspension started in September 2018. There was a recall petition set up in his constituency, but it didn't actually reach the figure. So there was never a by-election or anything else. Why they didn't advise Owen Pattison to do that last week, I don't know. As the circumstances are now, of course, he's not a Member of Parliament anymore. And I just find it extraordinary that they think they can bring another committee in, forget that there's half of the committee now is lay members, ordinary members of the public who've been interviewed and put onto the committee to help come to a judgment, which I hope gives members of the public some security in that it is not members of Parliament sitting in judgment over members of Parliament like it used to be when I first went onto the committee in 2005.
Should there be a hard and fast rule which prohibits Members of Parliament having second jobs?
My instinct on that is no. And I'll tell you why. In 2005 to 2010, I sat on the Health Select Committee. There was a member on that who was a practicing GP, Howard Stote, a colleague of mine. He was a Labour member. I think he used to do one surgery a week to see his constituents. And quite frankly, Gloria, I wouldn't want to go to an MP. Howard was in there for 13 years. I wouldn't want to go and see a doctor who's not practiced for 13 years. So I think the issue about maybe you should look at whether you can be a paid lobbyist or not, well, that might be a different issue. But that should be done, not by the House, although they will have to agree it. That should be done by the Parliamentary Commissioner and the Standards Committee to make recommendations to the House what should go ahead. Whether they will do that or not under those circumstances, I don't know. But I don't think a blanket ban is a sensible thing when you look round at people needing to keep their accreditations up, doing vital jobs. There's one current Labour Member of Parliament who works in A&E from time to time.
But the idea that you are paid to lobby for private companies, I mean, nobody would think that was acceptable, would they? So perhaps that's where we'll see change.
I think that's an area that needs to be looked at, but quite frankly, I'm away from it now. I'm at arm's length, as it were, so it's up for the current committee, along with the lay members that sit on it, to make some recommendations that the House can agree, hopefully.
In Parliament, during the last Sleaze Scandal in the 90s, just tell us about the impact that had on politics.
Well, it certainly did. I mean, I was there when the Cash for Questions that brought the independent commissioner into being. And quite frankly, what was said about her last week by at least one member of the cabinet, that she should reconsider her position, is absolutely outrageous. She, like others before her, have been independent-minded, have done their job, take legal advice from the Speaker's lawyers, and they've done, and certainly she has been doing a brilliant job in the years that I've known her. And I think that we have to get this into some perspective. And I think what happened last week was this was trying to effectively trying to save a friend who broke the rules, and what he should have done is to accept, as many other people have done, that broken the rules and the punishment that was being given out. Didn't mean to say his career was going to end, but sadly he's ended it himself this week.
You will have had to take difficult votes during the Labour government, things that you may not have been comfortable voting with, but the whip was very strong. Obviously, loads of Tory MPs are really angry that they were whipped to vote for a decision that was then reversed. Just tell us the impact that has on a particular party when the executive, the captain, if you like, has got it wrong, called it wrong. What effect does it have on the morale of troops?
Well, it clearly has a very negative effect on the morale of troops, quite frankly. And I mean, you saw it in the debate yesterday, where some members of the government benches were getting up and saying it as they saw it, including an ex-chief whip. That what happened last week, the attempt to try and get Owen Paterson off, as it were, at least in the short term, was wrong. And they were quite blatant about that. This business, in terms of the standards and in terms of any investigation and findings that have taken place, have never been whipped in the years that I've been in there. And it's quite clear that the whipping of that last week was a major mistake by Boris Johnson and his government.
Is it important for the opposition to be wary of bringing politics into disrepute? For example, Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, accused Johnson of trashing democracy and hoping to drag us all into the gutter with him. Is that a little bit over the top?
It is a bit over the top. I'm afraid that that's where politics has gone for quite a number of years now. You know, I remember, well, you will probably know that I was one of the Rotherham MPs, and three of us ended up in the High Court by people making allegations on national media that we knew about the major criminal activity taken against young girls in the Rotherham borough. That ended up in the High Court and being found against. No evidence was ever offered that we'd done that. Politics has turned quite nasty, quite frankly. And I'm pleased that I retired when I did, and I'm out of it.
Really? You're pleased to be out of it? Do you think there is a way back to restore trust in politics and politicians? Can you see more clearly now you are out of it?
Yes, I can. And, you know, I think people are getting better in terms of knowing at least what's going on. Their opinions about what's going on, well, that might be something that's debatable. But, you know, last week has been a major setback in my view. I think the government were probably saved, although they won't say it like this, that on the day after that decision had been taken in Parliament, the chairman of the Committee of Standards in Public Life, who was speaking at a conference at the Institute of Government in London, actually turned around and said that the government were fundamentally wrong in what they had done. We always took notice of the Committee of Standards in Public Life. It was them back in the 90s after the Cash for Questions debacle that got us the Independent Parliamentary Commissioner. And I'm pleased that he spoke out last week and that the government quickly changed their mind the day after. And I just hope that lessons have been learnt from that. And also lessons that you know, there are lay members, ordinary members of the public involved in these matters now, both in the investigation and in the adjudication. And hopefully that is going to remain. And
finally, some make the argument, which I'm not sure the public would have any truck with, that if members of Parliament were paid more, then we wouldn't get these sorts of scandals and these lack of trust or loss of faith in politics and politicians and the second jobs. Do you have any truck with that argument? Are MPs paid too little?
I have to say that my view is that it's very reasonable what MPs get, and I don't go along with that. I was there, although I wasn't the chair at the time, when the scandal of the expenses broke in 2008, 2009. And quite frankly, I was amazed what my colleagues, the Labour colleagues at the time, what they had done, some of them, and where they ended up, some in prison. And I said to one of my daughters, I said, I cannot believe that he would have done such and such. And she said, it's people and money, Dad. And she was very wise. And I think, you know, it's people and money. And sad to say that, you know, people and money, millionaires, multimillionaires do things wrong on occasions as well.